It's August 20th, 1965, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Ariel, Rebecca, and Ali, the Retrospectors.
Today in history in 1965, the Rolling Stones released I Can't Get No Satisfaction in the UK, some months after its US debut. And it's fair to say that by the time it came out, it was already a total sensation, due in no small part to its epic, distorted guitar riff, snarling vocals, and perhaps most importantly, its thinly veiled sexual frustration.
Yeah, in the US, it was released on the 4th of June, climbed up the charts steadily, topped the chart in July, stayed there for 4 weeks before being replaced by I'm Henry VIII, I Am by Herman Thomas, because 1965 was like
also
just such a weird year.
It is a banger. Less sexual frustration in that one.
Yeah.
But in the UK, despite the fact that the song was rapidly becoming this international mega hit, initially you could only hear it on pirate radio, which was because the Rolling Stones were in the US at the time touring, and their record label wanted them to return from the States so they could support the single in person. So by the time it was released in the UK on the 20th of August, in the US it had been released, climbed the chart, spent 4 weeks at number one, gone gold certified, and sort of passed its peak and was on its way down again before you could even buy it in UK record shops.
But there was that classic kind of US, UK, London, New York exchange going on here. This was the British invasion. The fact that this got traction in the US and had become a massive hit over there then influenced how people thought of this song in London, where it was banned, as you were saying, on mainstream radio because the lyrics were considered too sexually suggestive. We've been down this road since many times. Of course, the moment that the BBC says we won't play your record, it invariably goes straight to number one. And of course, not only did the style of this song, I mean, it's basically sort of just a riff, isn't it? It's a riff and some shouting, kind of solidify the sound of what the Rolling Stones were going to be, because before then, like the Beatles, they were a blues cover band, basically. They'd only just started writing their own songs, really. You know, this led to the template of Jumpin' Jack Flash and Brown Sugar and Honky Tonk Women and Start Me Up. They're all built on the same elements. But it also established them in contrast, in counterpoint to the Beatles. They were the dangerous ones, the punky ones that weren't saying, I want to hold your hand, but basically, I want to fuck you.
Yeah, and that riff came to Keith Richards in a dream. He woke up in a hotel room in Florida and he had it in his brain and he recorded it onto a cassette recorder that he had nearby him and then just fell back to sleep. And the next morning when he played back, he was like, oh yeah, I recorded something. And it was the riff, the down, down, na, 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 and then followed by just him snoring for an hour longer. He took it then to Mick Jagger and he was like, look, this is what I've come up with. I think it's okay. Immediately, Mick Jagger was very, very enthusiastic about it. Years later, I think because like Keith Richards had come up with not just the riff, but also the basic phraseology of I Can't Get No Satisfaction, Mick Jagger, he told Rolling Stone that the lyrics, because I Can't Get No Satisfaction obviously isn't a very English thing to say. And he said it was inspired by Chuck Berry. They'd been listening to lots of Chuck Berry, and he had a song called 30 Days, and it features the words, I can't get no satisfaction from the judge. And that isn't a way that, like, any English person would say something. But he was very quick to say, but of course we didn't steal that. It wasn't like a copyright infringement thing.
The title is derivative, and the riff Richards eventually thought was quite derivative as well. Once he actually heard it in the studio, he thought it sounded a lot like Dancing in the Street by Martha and the Vandellas.
And Nowhere to Run.
I mean, he was just like, oh, people are going to say this is a rip-off. So he didn't actually want it to be one of the album singles. The rest of the band ended up outvoting him. Actually, he didn't really get his way on a lot of the stuff because he was also responsible for playing the guitar which has the distortion in it, which is from a Gibson fuzz box. And it was so successful eventually that it caused a run on Gibson fuzz boxes. But Richards actually only wanted that to be a stand-in for what he envisioned as being like a definitive version they'd record later that would have a horn section playing the riff. And he thought the fuzz box, the lingering sound of the guitar would sort of stand in for how a horn section might sound.
And if you think, by the way, of what it would have sounded like with a horn section.
Amazing.
Yeah. And if you're curious, Otis Redding did a cover of I Can't Get No Satisfaction. You can hear, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Motown song, doesn't it? It sounds like Martha and the Vandellas. That's what he had in mind.
Yeah.
So weird that he then created this huge rock and roll sound.
And he had
so influential, sort of by accident, because it was supposed to be a saxophone,
horns,
but they had a guitar on it.
And he had to do it manually as well. You can actually hear the click in the background of the single. He was just literally switching during the recording between sort of straight guitar and the distorted guitar sound effect of the thing that he didn't even think was going to make it into the final cut. But in the end, the sound ended up being obviously incredibly iconic.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as well when you think about the transparency of sexuality.
Yeah.
Because as you say, Ollie, like up until this point, you had the Beatles hinting at what they would like to do with you. And
Hold your hand.
Yeah, and this really was another level above that. But at the same time, it's quite a sort of broad and questing song, because the other thing that is causing the narrator a lack of satisfaction is kind of...
Never really sounded more like a pompous academic.
Apart from his lack of honky-tonk with any kind of woman, is the fact that he's frustrated by society at large. Like, lots of the lyrics are about, like, the TV trying to sell you a new whitened shirt and whether your cigarette brand is masculine enough or whatever. And I think that is the other thing that really tapped into this generational moment in the sort of mid to late 60s. You know, it is encapsulating that sense of youthful rebellion, both wanting to go out and shag, but also like, hey man, stop trying to sell me your products. It's like the end of that World War II self-satisfaction is sort of summed up in this song.
Yeah, and like with Lennon and McCartney in the same way, where you get the cynicism from Lennon and the kind of beautiful sort of polished musical stuff from McCartney. You know, in this, Keith Richards gives you like the raw kind of vibe. And then Jagger, you know, betraying his roots as an LSE undergrad. I mean, he was still studying to be a journalist when the Stones were playing their first gigs at the Marquee Club. Comes out with the lyrics, which are not inane. Yeah. You know, they're simple and they're raw. But as you say, not only are they about sex, but in quite a complex way as well. She's on a losing streak, means she's on her period. But also a kind of frustration with modern Western capitalism. Radio is useless information. TV is filling his brain with vacuous nonsense. It's a rock and roll song about apathy. Yeah. And when you think about that combination, it's no wonder it has massive appeal to teenagers, right? Because those are the people jumping around in the mosh pit, full of energy, but also who have unaccountable, uncomfortable ennui from time to time with alarming regularity. It's both things at once, isn't it? I mean, I really feel apathetic.
But this is the thing, the reaction to the song and the fact that the BBC wouldn't play it, all of that kind of thing, that was a reaction to the attitude of the song, you know, that it was cynical and horny and vaguely anti-capitalist, but they couldn't actually say that. They had to find specific lyrics to form a concrete objection to. Because when you look at it, the losing streak thing went over everyone's heads at the time. The thing that caught the attention was the I can't get no girl reaction, which, to be fair, I have never realised that's what he's saying. No. I always thought he was saying good or gut. Even for 1965, that's not really raunchy. But the weird thing is that when in the US, girl reaction didn't seem to cause any problems. But when they were invited to perform on Shindig, which was a musical variety TV show,
don't slag off cigarette brands.
TV a little bit more conservative. They sang Satisfaction over the end credits, and the sound tastefully faded out over the line, I'm trying to make some girl. That was one that raised eyebrows in the States.
Yeah, well, similarly, when they went on the Ed Sullivan show, they had to take out the trying to make some girl line. But the girl's retort to that, better come back later next week, I'm on a losing streak. That was in because the producers didn't recognize that street slang for menstruation, and so that sort of passed by the censorship board sufficiently that they got away with it. You know, you can see the appeal that was built into it, that this was a song that was communicating so very clearly to its audience that even the people who would try to stop that message getting to that audience couldn't understand it properly.
It's also, it's so blokey, isn't it? Because it's the Rolling Stones and because it's Keith Richards and it's so masculine and all that and testosterone fueled. But actually, when you hear it sung by women, the sexuality of it is so much more obvious because you're used more to hearing that perspective from a woman. Like, you know, all these guys are climbing on me, but I can't get some satisfaction. And then it's just very clear that that's what it's about. Right. If you've heard the Britney Spears version, I mean, it's embarrassing to listen to because it's so explicitly about that.
I think it's important as well that it came out in 1965, because when I was just starting out on the research, I was like, that feels really early, almost too early. The Beatles in 1965, their singles were like Ticket to Ride and Help. They hadn't got that edgy sound.
This could be a Sex Pistols song.
Yeah, this sounds so different, but it is so perfect because we're just at the start of the 60s, sort of being the 60s. And so the lyrics, although they aren't explicit, in Britain, which still sees quite a repressed society at the time, it was very clear what he was singing about. You didn't need to be explicit because everyone sort of got the undertone. And the Rolling Stones themselves were undergoing that transition at the time. And 2 of the 3 UK number ones they'd had before this, they were just covers. But this was the song that really took them from being one of those 1960s blues rock kind of cover bands into being the Stones. Like without this, I was thinking like they would have been like the Animals.
Yes.
You know, they'd be like,
Jerry
oh
and the
yeah,
Pacemakers or something.
they had a couple of songs and like they covered some US songs that maybe UK audience didn't know so well, but like they wouldn't be the Rolling Stones.
But it's also funny how like many steps along the way could have seen this song not be released, and therefore, as you're saying, like the whole of their career just crumble. Like the whole Rolling Stones edifice wouldn't have existed. You know, like in the very early days when they first tried to record Satisfaction, they had it driven by acoustic guitars before the arrival of the Gibson Maestro fuzz tone pedal thing. And it just wasn't coming out the way that anyone imagined it. In that first recording, there was this moment where Andrew Loog Oldham, who was their very first manager, had said that the harmonica that was being laid down was blubbering like some sitcom outtake. Like everything about it in the early stages of its genesis just wasn't working. And it really took that moment when their longtime road manager, Ian Stewart, slipped out, got that special guitar and was like, here, I've tuned it so that it's going to be more fuzzy and it's going to give you something like the sound that you're craving. And that was the thing that like totally catapulted it into, you know, the format that we understand it today.
Favourite cover version of I Can't Get No Satisfaction?
I have a soft spot for Otis Redding.
Yeah. And actually, the Stones did as well, because now every time they perform Satisfaction live,
The Otis Redding version.
Yeah, they have a horn section. So they're that's...
But do they keep their words? Because
always...
Otis Redding famously basically changed all the words.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He didn't know them. And apparently someone wrote them down for him, but they couldn't really understand what the Stones were saying either. So they just wrote down what they thought they heard, and Otis Redding kind of looked at it and was like, no, I don't think so. And just sort of improvised.
Musos often say that the best one is PJ Harvey and Björk at the Brits. But I have a special place in my heart for the version by Vanilla Rice.
That was when he tried to reinvent himself.
That's right. Even though I think it's quite evident why he couldn't get any action.
Yeah.
There's no mystery.
Tomorrow.
She's looked both ways. She's obviously thought, am I going to get away with it? She seems like the most unlikely suspect.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.